Hello my scholars, you are welcome to the Myschool YouTube channel and my name is Frank. In today's video, we shall be tackling JAMB Physics CBT past question for the year 2025. So relax, do not go anywhere and we'll be right back. You are welcome back to the Myschool YouTube channel. In today's video, we shall be answering question 1 to 25. So let's begin with question 1. Which of these colors in the visible spectrum has the longest wavelength? Okay, so in order to answer this question, it is proper for us to use the acronym for representing the colors in the visible spectrum, and that is ROY, right? So it's written ROYGBIV. So these are the 7 colors in the visible spectrum, right? And this is actually the arrangement of the colors in order of increasing frequency. But remember that frequency is inversely proportional to wavelength, right? Meaning as frequency is increasing, wavelength is decreasing. So this arrangement is showing that frequency is increasing, right? Meaning that in this arrangement, frequency is decreasing, and decreasing has to start with the highest to the lowest, okay? So based on this, the color with the longest wavelength is arrow, and that is red, okay? So that makes option A the correct answer to this question. Question 2. The power of a lens in diopters is, so the answer to this question is 1 over f, right? And remember that f actually represents the focal length of the lens, right? So but remember that if you are using 1 over f, then f must be in meter, right? But if f is given to you in centimeter, then in that case it becomes 100 over f, right? But the correct answer to this question is option B, which is 1 over f. Question 3. A man moves 6.0 meters east and then 10.0 meters 30-degree northeast. How far is he from his starting point? So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So in order to provide answer to this question, we have to do a little sketch, right? So this represents, let's say this is the starting point where this is where the man started the movement. So he moves to the east, okay, and this is 6.0 meters, right? Then he now move 10.0 meters 30-degree northeast. So remember, this is our north. So northeast will be this side. So here will be 30 degrees. And here is 10.0 meters. So in order to solve this, we just have to resolve this, because this is a question on vector. So we have to resolve it into the x and y components. Okay. But then we can as well use other methods to solve it. But that's just what I prefer to use here. Okay. So for the x component, let's just write it down. So here we'll have our x. And here we have our y, right? So here we have 6.0 meters. So here we have our 6.0 meters, right? Because here the angle is 0, okay? And if we use cos 0 is 1. But here we'll be having 0, right? So we have to resolve this into x and y component. So here we'll be having 10. Okay, so here we'll have 10. So here we'll be having 10 sine 30 degree, right? While here we'll be having 10 cos 30 degree, okay? And the reason for this is because of where the angle is aligned, right? So the angle is aligned to the vertical line or the vertical arc, okay? So that's the reason for this. So 10 sine 30 is the same thing as 5, right? The same thing as 5. While here is the same thing as 8.66 approximately, right? So now we cannot get the magnitude, okay, which is what we are actually looking for. That is this how far the man moved from his starting point, right? So in this case, we'll be having, let's just call it arrow is equals to, you'll be having s squared plus y squared, okay? So in this case, we're having arrow is equals to root. So we add this together for s. So in that case, we'll be having 11 squared, then plus that for y. So that will be 8.66 squared, right? So at the end of the day, we'll be having arrow to be equals to root 196, okay? Then the square root of 196 is equals to 14, right? Since we are talking about distance, that will be equals to 14 meters, right? So the distance of the man from its starting point to its current position is equals to 14 centimeter. That is from this point to here, okay, is equals to 14 centimeter. So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option C, 14.0 meters. Question 4. The density of water is 1 gram per centimeter cube, while that of ice is 0.9 grams per centimeter cube. Calculate the change in volume when 90 grams of ice is completely melted. So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So basically what we are going to be doing here is just for us to calculate the volume of ice and the volume of water. Then we'll now look for the change, right? Okay, so the values that are given to us, we are given the density of ice, we are given the density of water. Okay, we're also given the mass of ice, but we are not given the mass of water, okay? But what you must take note of is that when ice melts or when ice changes into water, the mass of the ice is conserved, so there's no change in mass. So the mass of the ice and the mass of the water will still be the same. So that's why we are using the mass of water, okay, to be equals to 90 grams, okay? So now we know that density is equals to mass all over volume, right? We are looking for volume, so we just say volume is equals to mass all over density. So for ice, we'll be having V ice is equals to then the mass 90, then divided by the density, which is 0.9. So this will be equals to 100, right? So this will be equals to 100 centimeter cube. So if we multiply here by 10, okay, in order to clear this decimal point, we'll be having 9. Then we'll also multiply here by 10 so that the fraction will be equivalent. So here we'll be having 900. So 900 divided by 9, that will be equals to 100. Okay, so that's why we have 100 centimeter cube for the volume of the ice. So we'll also do the same thing for that of water. So VH2O will now be equals to, so the mass is 90, then divided by 1, and this will be equals to 90 centimeter cube. Okay, so the change in volume now will now be equals to 100 centimeter cube minus 90 centimeter cube, and this will be equals to 10 centimeter cube. Okay, so the volume of the water actually decreases by 10 centimeter cube, so that is the change. So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer for this question, and that is option D, 10 centimeter cube. Question 5. The graphical representation of the pressure law is always a straight line passing through the origin only if the temperature scale is A will have Rankine, B will have Celsius, C will have Fahrenheit, and D will have thermodynamic. So the answer to this question is thermodynamic, okay? So the graphical representation of the pressure law is always a straight line passing through the origin only if the temperature scale is absolute or Kelvin temperature scale, right? And Kelvin temperature scale is still the same as thermodynamic temperature scale. So that makes option D the correct answer to this question. Question 6. According to the kinetic theory of gases, the pressure exerted by a gas on the wall equals A, momentum imparted to the walls per unit area, B, change in momentum per unit volume, C, change in momentum imparted to the wall per unit area, D, rate of change of momentum imparted to the wall per second per unit area. So the answer to this question is option D, rate of change of momentum imparted to the walls per second per unit area. The reason is because gas molecules, they collide with the walls of the container, and this collision brings about momentum, right? And the pressure of collision depends on how fast this momentum is transferred to the walls of the container per unit area. So that makes option D the correct answer to this question. Question 7. Which of the following is not true about a wave in a plucked string? A, it is mechanical, B, it has a crest, C, it is transverse, and D, it is longitudinal. So in order to answer this question, it's proper for us to sketch a wave diagram of a plucked string. So it will be like this. So this is the string, but once it is plucked, it will start vibrating, right? So from this diagram, we already know that it is mechanical, okay? And 2, it has a crest. So here is crest, while here is trough, even though trough is not mentioned, right? Then 3, it is transverse. It is transverse in the sense that this is the direction of propagation of the wave, while the particles of the medium, in this case, which is string, are moving up and down, so that makes it transverse. So what is not true about a wave in a plugged string, according to the option provided, is option D. That is, it is longitudinal. So option D is the correct answer to this question. Question 8. The EMF of a cell is the potential difference across its terminal when it is in A series circuit, series connection, B, closed circuit, C, open circuit, and D, parallel connection. So the answer to this question is option C, open circuit. So the EMF of a cell is the potential difference across its terminal when it is in open circuit. So an open circuit is one that is not delivering any current, okay? So that makes option C the correct answer to this question. Question 9. The thermometric property of mercury is based on the change in A, density with temperature, B, volume with temperature, C, pressure with temperature, and D, resistance with temperature. So the answer to this question is option B. Okay, so the thermometric property of mercury is based on the change in volume with temperature, and the reason for that is because mercury actually relies, or mercury thermometers, okay, relies on thermal expansion of volume. That is, when there's a change in temperature, that also brings about a change in the volume of the mercury. Okay, so that makes option B the correct answer to this question, volume with temperature. Question 10. Some of the features of the human eye that greatly help to refract light entering the eyes are A, cornea and lenses, B, cornea and aqueous humor, C, lenses and vitreous humor, D, aqueous humor and lenses. So the answer to this question is option A, cornea and lenses. So corneas are the primary reflecting or refracting surface of the eyes, okay? While lenses, what they basically do is to fine-tune focus, okay? While aqueous humor and vitreous humor, they just fill space and give shape to the eye. So basically, they are not significantly refracting surface, okay? So that makes option A the correct answer to this question, cornea and lens. Question 11. When both the object and its image move together in the same direction relative to the observer, then there is A, no parallax error, B, blurred image, C, mechanical error, D, parallax error. So the answer to this question is no parallax error. So parallax error occurs when the image and object move relative to each other, causing a shift in apparent position. But for this question, the object and the image are moving together, so no shift in apparent position, okay? So that makes option A the correct answer to this question, no parallax error. Do you know you can take practice question with our JAMB simulated CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below, and that will take you to Myschool website. There you will need to download Myschool mobile app for your Android and iOS devices, and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Moving on to question 12. The diagram above shows a magnetic field due to A, solenoid, B, circular coil, C, current carrying straight conductor, and D, the Earth's meridian. So the answer to this question is option C, current carrying straight conductor. Okay, so the diagram above shows a magnetic field, and that magnetic field is due to current carrying straight conductor. Okay, so that makes option C the correct answer to this question. I believe you are enjoying this video content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly, put on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we release the next video. Question 13. I, the color of light depends on its frequency. I, when white light is dispersed by a rectangular prism, yellow is deviated more than green. Rainbows are formed when rains fall heavily. Which of the above statements is correct about dispersion and colors? Okay, so remember our red booth, which is the color of visible spectrum, right? So here, remember, these colors are arranged according to or in order of ascending frequency. Okay, so from here we can see that the color of light depends on its frequency. So the more the frequency, the more that particular color is deviated or dispersed, right? Then when white light is dispersed by rectangular prism, yellow is deviated more. No, yellow is not deviated more because before yellow is not deviated more than green, but green is deviated more than yellow. So according to this acronym, why rainbows are formed when rains fall heavily. Rainbows are not formed when rain falls heavily. Okay, so the only statement that is true about dispersion and color is option B. That is I only. That is, the color of light depends on its frequency. Okay, so that makes option B the correct answer to this question. Question 14. A force 18 Newton pulls a 40 kg mass on a horizontal floor at 0.3 meter per second squared. Find the coefficient of friction. So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So in this question, we are asked to calculate for the coefficient of friction. But remember that frictional force F, okay, is directly proportional to normal reaction R, right? So we need to introduce a constant, and that constant is the coefficient of friction. So that F is equals to mu R, right? So we are looking for mu. So here we are having coefficient of friction is equals to F divided by R, right? But remember, R is equals to mg, right? Okay, but then we also need to calculate for the frictional force. Now remember that this force that is given to us is the applied force, right? So we also need to look for the force that was overcome, right? So first of all, let's get our normal reaction. But remember that G is always equals to 10, right? So here we'll be having 40 times 10, that equals to 400, okay, 400 Newton, okay. Now let's calculate for the force that was overcome. So the force that was overcome, F is equals to MA, okay. So here we'll be having 40 times 0.3, okay, and this is equals to 12 Newton, right? So to get the frictional force F, okay, that will be equals to the 18 Newton, which is the applied force, then minus 12 Newton. And this will be equals to 6 Newton. So the frictional force that was overcome is 6 Newton. So from here, we can just substitute and get our answer. So here we have 6, that is from this formula. So we have 6 all over 400, okay? So 6 divided by 400, that equals to 0.015. Now remember, mu or coefficient of friction is just a ratio, so it does not have any unit. Okay, so let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option B, 0.015. Question 15. A 500 watts electric oven plugged into a 220 volt source will consume an electric current of. So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So electrical power, we know that is given as P is equals to IV, okay, where I represent current, V is equals to voltage. So in this question, power has been given to us to be equals to 500 watts. Okay, so here we have our 500, then equals to the current, then times the voltage that is given to us to be equals to 220. So here we have 220. Now, since we are looking for I, we just make it the subject of formula by simply dividing both sides by 220. So that I is equals to 500 divided by 220. So 0 will cancel 0. Okay, so 22 into 50, that would be like 2.27 approximately. Okay, so the current consumed is equals to 2.27 amperes, right? So let's move back to the screen to pick the correct option for this question, and that is option B, 2.27 amperes. Question 16. A hydraulic press consists of 2 cylinders of cross-sectional radius R1 and R2. If a force of 200 Newton applied to the smaller piston R1 causes a force of 3,200 Newton to be transmitted onto the larger piston R2, the ratio R1 to R2 is, so let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. Okay, and to answer this question, we have to apply Pascal principle, right? So according to Pascal, it said any little pressure exerted at any point in a confined fluid is transmitted in all directions all over the fluid. Okay, so what that means is that the pressure applied at one point is equals to the pressure at the other end, okay? So, but remember that pressure P is equals to force all over area, right? But in this question, there's no area. So remember that area is pi r square, okay? So you'll be having F1 representing the small piston all over pi r1 square, okay, for the smaller radius is equals to F2 for the bigger piston all over pi r2 square, right? So from here, pi can cancel out pi, right? So that we have F1 all over r1 square is equals to F2 r2 square, right? Since we are looking for r1 ratio r2, so we just make it the subject of formula. So in order to do that, we will have to multiply both sides. Okay, we have to multiply both sides by r1, right? So we have to multiply both sides by r1 square, okay? So that at the end of the day, we'll be having, so if we multiply here by r1 square, so this we cancel out this. So here we'll be having r1 square here, okay? So we'll be having F1 is equals to F2 r1 square all over r2 square, right? So we need to remove this F2 from here. So what do? We simply divide both sides by F2. So if we divide it by F2, we'll be having r1 square all over r2 square to be equals to F1 all over F2, okay? So we just substitute the values that are given to us. So r1 square all over r2 square is equals to F1 is 200, okay, all over F2 is 3,200. So 0 will cancel out zeros, right? So at the end of the day, we have 1 over 16. 2 here is 16, 2 here is 1, right? Now, since we are looking for the ratio of r1 to r2, we have to take the square root of both sides. So if we take the square root of both sides, we'll be having r1 all over r2 to be equals to 1 over 4. Because if we take the square root of 1, it will still be 1. Take the square root of 16, that will be 4, okay? So we can rewrite this r1 ratio r2 is equals to 1 ratio 4, okay? So the ratio of r1 to r2 is equals to 1 ratio 4. So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option A, 1 ratio 4. Question 17. The gravitational pull between two bodies is 20 Newton. Find the gravitational pull when their distance of separation is doubled. So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So gravitational pull is just the gravitational force of attraction between two bodies, right? So we know that F is given as Gm1 M2 all over R. Okay, all over R square, where R here represents the distance between the two bodies. So according to the question, we are told that this is equals to 20 Newton, right? Now for the second part of the question, they said that the distance between the two bodies is doubled, right? So in this case, we are assuming the distance to be equals to R. So F will be equals to G M1 M2 all over 2R because it's doubled square. So at the end of the day, we have G M1 M2 all over, so you'll be having 4R square, right? So we can rewrite this to be equals to 1 over 4 times G M1 M2 all over R square, right? But remember that GM1 M2 all over R square is equals to 20. So we replace this whole thing with 20. So that we'll be having 1 over 4 times 20. Okay, and 1 over 4 times 20 is the same as 20 divided by 4. And that equals to 5 Newton, okay? So the new gravitational pull is equals to 5 Newton when the distance between the two bodies is doubled, right? So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option B, 5 Newton. Question 18. The volume of a 1 centimeter cube metal ball increases by 0.0018 centimeter cube when heated through temperature theta. If the linear expansivity of the ball is 2.0 times 10 raised to the power minus 5 per Kelvin, find theta. So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. Now, this question is under is under cubic or volume expansivity, right? Now, if you want to learn more about any topic in physics, then you should subscribe to the Myschool topic by topic video lesson where you will learn all the topics, okay? So now remember that volume expansivity gamma is equals to the change in volume all over original volume, okay, times temperature or change in temperature, right? But remember that 1 gamma is equals to 3 linear expansivity. So in this question, we are given linear expansivity. So in place of gamma, we replace it with 3 linear expansivity. So here we'll be having 3 times 2.0 times 10 raised to the power minus 5. And this will be equals to, now the change has been given to us to be equals to 0.0018 all over, the original volume is 1, then times theta, right? So since we are looking for theta, we just swap position. So here we'll be having theta, while you'll be having 0.0018 all over. So if we multiply here, that will be equals to 6. So 6 times 10 raised to the power minus 5. Okay, so basically we have to remove this times 10 raised to the power minus 5, right? So in order to do that, we have to multiply here by 10 raised to the power 5 and also multiply the numerator by 10 raised to the power 5. So that at the end of the day, this one will cancel out. So that we'll be having, of course, this is 10 raised to the power 5 is the same thing as 100,000, right? So if we do that here, if we multiply this, we'll be having 180 all over 6. So 180 divided by 6, that will be equals to 30, right? Now, since we are talking about temperature, so that will be equals to 30 degrees, okay? So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer for this question, and that is option C, 30 degrees Celsius. Question 19. For a gas, which pair of variables is inversely proportional to each other, provided other conditions are constant, where P is equals to pressure, T is equals to temperature, V is equals to volume, and N equals to number of molecules? So to answer this question, we just have to use Boyle's law, okay? So according to Boyle's law, P is inversely proportional to volume, okay? While for the other one, when pressure is constant, then volume and temperature, that is for Charles' law, volume and temperature are directly proportional, okay? So the pair of variables, okay, that is inversely proportional to each other when other conditions are constant is pressure and volume, okay? So that makes option B the correct answer to this question, PV. Question 20. A boy uses a single string pulley system to lift a mass of 20 kilograms, moving with a velocity of 5 meters per second. What is the power developed by the boy if G is equals to 10 meters per second square? So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. Since we are calculating for power, we know that power is equals to work done all over time, right? But in this question, there is no work done, and then we use the other. So in this case, we use the other formula for calculating power, which is power is equals to F times V. So where F here stands for force and V stands for velocity, right? So to get our force, F will be equals to mg, right? And that will be 20 times 10. This will be equals to 200 Newton. So since we already know the value of F, we just substitute it into this formula so that the P, which represents power, will now be equals to 200 times the velocity, which is 5. That will be equals to 1,000. Okay, since we are talking about power, that will be 1,000 watts. Okay, so let's return back to the screen to pick the correct option for this question, and that is option B, 1,000 watts. Question 21. Without considering the containing vessel, what mass of boiled water can raise the temperature of 8 kilograms of water from 25 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius when mixed in a heat-proof container? So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question, okay? So in this case, it's going to be heat gained by cold water, right? By cold water, that will be equals to heat loss by hot water. Okay, so basically this is what we use to answer this question. Okay, so here we'll be having MC change in data all over. Here we'll be having MC also change in data, right? So M here represents the mass of cold water, while M here represents the mass of hot water. While C here represents the heat capacity, specific heat capacity of water, which is the same. So in this case, we'll cancel out, right? So here we only have mass of water, mass of cold water, and the mass of cold water given to us in this question is 8 grams. So here we have 8, then times the change in temperature, okay? That is 60 minus 25, right? This will be equals to m times the change in temperature here will be 100 minus 60, okay? 100 minus 60. So here we'll be having 8 times, I think this should be equals to 35. So here we'll be having m times 40, right? So since we are looking for m, we just make it the subject of formula. So that m, now, but remember that this m here represents the mass of hot water, which we are calculating for. So we'll be having the mass to be equals to 8 times 35 divided by 40, okay? So 8 here is 1, 8 here is 5, right? Then 5 here is 1, 5 here is 7. So that the mass of hot water is equals to 7 kg. Okay, so let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option B, 7 kg. Do you have any question? Please feel free to ask your question by simply clicking on the link in the description below, and that will take you to my school website. There you can ask all your questions, and our team of solution providers will provide answers to all your questions within a short period of time. Moving on to question 22. Which of the following has the least thermal conductivity? So A, we have air, B, we have ashes, C, we have glass, and D, we have water. Okay, so the answer to this question is option A. So air has the least thermal conductivity compared to every other thing that was listed in the option. So air is a good insulator but a poor conductor. So that makes option A the correct answer to this question. If you have better solution or steps to any of these questions, please share this information by going to the comment section to comment the question number and the solution you wish to share. Question 23. 5,400 kilojoule of heat energy was lost when some amount of steam condensed to water for drinking purposes at 15 degrees Celsius. What is the quantity of water collected? Latent heat of condensation is equals to 2.26 times 10 raised to power 6 joule per kilogram. The specific heat capacity of water is equals to 4,200 joules per kilogram per Kelvin. Let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. Okay, so the total heat, okay, for this question will be equals to MLF then plus MC then change in temperature, right? First of all, this is for the heat of condensation. That is for all the steam, okay, to change into water. Certain amount of heat will be released, and that is this. While for the water to cool from that 100 degrees Celsius to 15 degrees Celsius represent this. So this is the total amount of heat that is involved. But remember, the total amount of heat is given to us to be equals to 5,400 kilojoule, which is 5400 times 10 raised to power 3. So if we put this in standard form, we have 5.4 times 10 raised to power 6 joules, right? So this is for the heat, right? So now we can now substitute our value. So here we'll be having so here we can actually bring m out because that's what we need. So HT will be equals to m bracket open LF plus the C then change in data, right? Now here we have 5.4 times 10 raised to power 6 is equals to m bracket. So here we have 2.26 times 10 raised to power 6 then plus 4,200 then times the change in temperature, which is 100 minus 15. Okay, so here we're having 5.4 times 10 raised to power 6 is equals to m bracket 2.26 times 10 raised to power 6 plus 4,200 times, I think this should be 85, right? So since we are looking for m, we just make m the subject of formula. So that we'll be having m to be equals to 5.4 times 10 raised to power 6 all over 2.26 times 10 raised to power 6 plus 4,200 times 85. Okay, so if we divide the numerator, if we divide the numerator by the denominator, we'll be having 2.06 kg. Okay, so this is the mass of water. So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option D, 2.06 kilogram. Question 24. Charge carriers in doped semiconductors are A, electrons and protons, B, electrons and neutrons, C, ions and cations, and D, electrons and holes. Okay, so the answer to this question is option D, electrons and holes. So the charge carriers in doped semiconductors are electrons. So the electrons are the negative charge carriers, while the holes are the positive charge carriers. So that makes option D the correct answer to this question. Question 25. If the critical angle for a glass air boundary is 45 degrees, what is the refractive index of the glass? So let's move over to the board to provide answer to this question. So there's a relationship between critical angle and refractive index, okay? And that relationship is given as n is equals to 1 over sine c, where c represents the critical angle, n represents the refractive index, okay? So here, the critical angle is given to us to be equals to 45. So n is equals to 1 all over sine 45, okay? And sine 45 is the same thing as root 2, right? If we use this, now remember that 45 is one of those special angles, right? So here will be 1, here will be 1, here is your 90 degree, let's say here is the angle, while here is root 2, right? Since we are talking about sine, that is so, that means we have opposite all over hypotenuse, okay? So that sine theta is equals to 1 over root 2, right? So sine 45 is equals to 1 over root 2. So n is equals to 1 all over 1 all over root 2, right? This is the same thing as, say, root 2, right? So the value of the refractive index of the glass is equals to root 2. So let's return back to the screen to pick the correct answer to this question, and that is option A, root 2. I believe you enjoyed this video content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly, tap on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we upload the next videos.